keep a lot of notes. Type notes, or well, I used to do video notes. That's how this whole channel thing started here for me. I started uploading them, but I sometimes check them just to see if there's anything I kind of forgot about or wanted to talk about. And I just looked through them today, and I had one that said, "War, kid, you're bothering me." I don't know what that was all about. Being plugged in, I mention this sometimes, and what I mean by being plugged in is you feel like you're plugged in to source, to the shared consciousness, God, the source, whatever you call it. And when I feel like when you're plugged in, you get a lot of understanding. You start understanding things. You get a lot of answers to stuff, or you have a lot of realizations. Like, you'll be like, oh, well, that's why water is the way it is, And you just have these things that just are banging around in your hard drive that have always been there. You just can't access for whatever reason. Well, because you're not plugged in. So I go through periods where, like, I'm having all this great stuff happen, where these synchronicities are flying. I'm starting to understand things better, have maybe some kind of supernatural type experiences. And then sometimes I go through periods of having none of that. And I'm going through a period now where it seems like everything's kind of quieted down. I'm not worried about it, but I wonder why exactly that happens, the sort of ebb and flow. It's not really even like ebb and flow. It's kind of like high tide and low tide. It's like it's either all coming in or it's all going out. This whole process for me started, I would say, and I'm going to use the word that I hate, in earnest in 2016. And I hate that word because it doesn't mean anything. I say that, yet I use it all the time. But and I kind of got into all this stuff. Well, it was probably around the same time everybody else did. 2016 there was a huge jump in the Schumann resonance, which is like the dial tone of the Earth. And there was one in 2012, the bigger one in 2016. And from that time, it seems like a lot of people started having these kind of things happen. I had a friend that it was happening to, and while I had experiences, some strange ones over the years, some really significant ones, I wasn't having it on a regular basis, along with the kind of understandings, or those whatever you call it, like that. I'm missing a word here, and once I find it, this whole thing will be better. But in any case, he was going through some stuff, and I started helping him out. I took an interest in what was going on with him. He was being kind of followed by people, and I thought it was something like normal, or normal for here, where I thought it was just like regular people were after him. But it turned out after a while, it turned out to not be the case. It was a spiritual thing, a demonic kind of thing. And it took a long time to put that together, far longer than it should have. I'm kind of dumb with this shit sometimes, which is strange considering now and everything that's happened since. But I don't think I ever really went into it in a video about it. But what was going on is, these people were kind of harassing him, sort of. Like they'd all end up in his house. They're kind of controlling him. And it was all a bunch of homeless people. Drug addicts, all of them. And I don't know. It was weird. It's like I thought it was just because he was real nice and they were taking advantage of that. Like, why you always let these dudes in your house? You know, why are you going to this place because they told you to? They're literally like controlling him. And I didn't understand it. The weirder thing was, it was like, I'd talk to him like the next day and be like, hey man, we were hanging at your house the other night, and you said you had to leave to go look for scrap metal or something. He was going to some yard to get scrap metal. He didn't even know what I was talking about. So I thought, my first thought was, okay, these guys have some kind of weird witchcraft type of spellcraft stuff they're using to control him and make him do all this stuff. That's what I thought at first. And it turns out, yeah, that's not the case. They were just all demonically possessed. And it sounds schizo, but that's exactly what was going on. And I kind of had to figure this out over a course of different events that happened while I was with them or around them, you know. I'm always fucking trying to light a cigarette. I have to smoke though, you know why. If I don't smoke, people crowd me, you've seen it. But, or maybe you haven't, I don't fucking know if you're just stumbling upon this shit. But, I was thinking they were some kind of weird cult or some kind of warlocks that were kind of channeling the devil or something. I don't know what the fuck was going on, but they were controlling him and he would forget about it. He kind of didn't understand what was happening either. And then, yeah, there's no real linear way to tell this story because there's a lot of parts to it that happened over time, but that's what got me into it. Like, that's what kind of got me looking at this stuff. And as that's happening, I'm going through this sort of spiritual awakening process that a lot of people started going through at that time. And the two things kind of dovetailed together. And I keep trying to do a video with him about this stuff, but every time he comes down, he doesn't stay long. We talked about doing it, but I think once I get one with him where he can explain along with me what was happening, then it'll kind of open up for me to be able to talk more about the other things, because I mean, a lot of what I talk about just sounds fucking so schizophrenic. So if you can have receipts, you know, for any of this stuff, it just gives me more confidence to talk about it. But during that time is when I first kind of began to feel or understand the concept of being plugged in. You know, like being plugged into the source and getting all this information and understanding. Because I was learning on the fly, and I was having a situation that was unfolding in my life that worked alongside it. So it was really a great way to come. I mean, you know, it was a great way to come into it, really. And it seemed like back then, every time a new thing would appear or a new situation would present itself, I'd always go online and find other people who had a similar thing going on. And there was always someone, and from there I ended up meeting a lot of different people and finding a lot of new groups who I could consult for knowledge, who have already experienced this stuff or were experiencing this stuff. A lot of religious people, a lot of I used to talk to a priest quite a bit. That was well, not quite a bit, occasionally. We'd email back and forth about things. He is pretty certain that there's going to be some eventual showdown, as many religious people do, between God and Satan. Some kind of either a metaphysical fight or a physical fight, or some showdown is going to happen. He was positing that's why we're having these body changes that we've been having, which are sort of being called Mandela effects. Well, they are. I mean, they're lumped in with that because they're changes to our reality that seem to be happening that no one has any reason for or answer for. All the body changes we've had, and if you want to check some of these out, they're pretty amazing. You just look up Mandela body changes or Mandela effect body changes. You just use Mandela, it'll come up. Our bodies have kind of been upgraded. For instance, there used to be a thing called the kidney punch. And it's called that because you hit like behind, almost on the side of the back there, toward the back, where it hit the kidneys. But you can no longer do that because all of our organs are now encased in this, what they're calling a rib cage, but I don't know, it looks like fucking aliens to me. Well, I remember seeing the rib cage as a kid as being, you know, it came down to where the top of your stomach would be. And there was like a little like cage that wrapped around that area. Now it goes down the entire length of your body, down to your waist. And that's just the beginning. I mean, there's a ton of different stuff. The skull is completely different. Not completely, but enough to be completely. The biggest one for me was the bones behind the eyes. As a kid, I remember I used to love skeletons. I had a lot of skeleton toys and rubber skeletons and shit. And one of the coolest things about them was that they had the hollow eyes, like those, just there was nothing in them, because inside is where your cartilage and you know, your eyes were, and the eye socket and the stalk and everything. There's now bone there behind where your eyes would be, and there are holes in your skull for the nerve endings in the part of the stalk to go through. That just wasn't the case from my memory. So there's a lot of that stuff. And this priest was saying he thinks these changes are because our bodies are going to be utilized by demons, or they plan to use the bodies of people for demons to inhabit, because demons are incorporeal. The only time you see them is if you're seeing into where they are. That's a whole nother subject though. But here, they're around all the time, but they're incorporeal. They have no body. They're not like a mist. They're not like anything. You just don't see them. You can pick them up on film, but you don't see them here. For them to interact with us, just like us, they need bodies. I mean, if we didn't have bodies, we couldn't interact with this 3D area that we put around in these meat sacks. Well, we don't actually put around in them. I believe we broadcast to them. These are more like antennas. But yeah, this is a really long-winded way to say I've been kind of plugged in since 2016, as far as when I started learning this stuff. I think that situation with the demons and shit was a separate thing. It was a lucky accident that it all kind of happened at the time when a lot of other people, and I believe it has to do with something with that Schumann resonance jump in 2016. Yeah, I'll go into more about the specific demon encounters, but from the 2016 on, when I've had encounters with them as they were in the bodies of people, it's never been something that I was afraid of. It sounds fucking horrifying, and if I'd been told this stuff years before it happened, I'd be fucking freaked out. But when you're there and you're interacting with them, the feeling isn't fear, it's more disgust. They have this really, you don't smell it, and obviously you don't see it, you feel it. It's like, someone described it once as the feeling of rotten meat on top of static. And that's pretty good description of how it feels to be in their presence. But that being said, I haven't had an interaction with any of those kind of things in, man, it's been about 2 years now. After that initial situation I was in kind of wrapped itself up, well, it didn't really wrap itself up. We just kind of separated. And when we separated, I only had a few instances by myself where I ran into them. But the whole time this was happening, it was always like they seemed to be trying to get me away from him or separating me from him, because there's something about him that they were really into. And since that time, I haven't had much trouble with them. I mean, I've had other things happen, but not, not like that, or not with those kind of things. Anyway, yeah, this is really going. No, I'm just kind of wandering way off fucking script and really distracted by some of the energy out here. All right, I gotta get going. Don't blame the teacher, blame the school.